Hello, my name is Noah Coburn, and today I'm going to go through a little piece of workflow associated with completing a work order. Now, in this specific application, work orders go through rather complex workflow that actually goes between multiple different parties in the process of completing it and actually involves both internal and external employees. To give you a little bit of background on the specific application, work orders actually get dispatched out to external employees who live everywhere around the country and are actually not direct employees of the application designer. The external employees will then be able to apply for taking and actually completing the work order. The internal employees review them, actually assign the best qualified tech for the job, and then there's some additional workflow associated with completing the job, and then actually there's a review process after that done by the internal employees, and then finally the work order is actually paid out. So this is rather intense workflow and will probably take somewhere in the range of 1 hour to complete the entirety of it. So it may be a little disjointed here and there as I fill in some of the gaps, but hopefully you'll be able to bear with me. So I'm going to click into a work order to show you some of the background of what's currently implemented. There's some work order details here, and I've created my own little development section to have some fields that I don't want actually displayed in the interface, but are just for my own internal use and for development. And the fields I want to call to your attention right now are these down at the bottom here, the date, time, tech assigned, down through currently on hold. Now these are essentially kind of, I guess, waypoints on the way for the work order reaching a completed status. So you can see these correspond directly to the various steps of the workflow, and at each point that it reaches the next step of the workflow, I'm going to timestamp when that actually happened and use that to determine what status the workflow is currently in. So I'm going to bring up the automation here, and I've used a function which I've placed and disabled in this location. I'm sorry, not disabled, but there's a function to actually set the status based on what point of the workflow it's currently at. So first I check to see if the work order has been canceled, and if it has been canceled I set it into the canceled status. Then I see if it's marked as on hold, and if so, in hold status, and then I backtrack through the workflow seeing if it reached the closed status, and if it's totally complete I'll mark it as closed, else, and then I backtrack through each successive previous step of the work order, backtracking all the way through until if nothing has been completed on the work order and hasn't been dispatched to anybody, then I'll set the status as brand new and ready to dispatch. So given that I have this backend functionality already completed, all I'll need to do at the various points of the workflow are timestamp or set the appropriate field that marks the waypoint that it would reach that status, and then rerun this function to generate the appropriate status that the work order is at. So since that function already runs on the global table post save action hook, that's going to set the new status when the work order is first created. So the next point in here is actually when the work order has been dispatched, we want to mark it as dispatching. So under the dispatching tab you can see we have a list of the texts to which this work order has already been dispatched. So these are this is actually a different table, the work order dispatch table, and you can see a list of related records to the current work order, and this is the people that we've offered the job to. And you can see there's a separate status and a separate workflow associated with each dispatch record, but we won't get into that for the purposes of this work order. So the next step is actually to dispatch it to a tech. So that it's done by clicking on Find Techs, searching the tech database for the appropriate tech to dispatch it to, and clicking to either manually dispatch it out to them or auto dispatch. And these are separate functions that have their own workflow associated with them as well, but for the purposes of this we don't really need to get into that. So under manual dispatch you can see that there's automation to create the appropriate records to denote that they've been dispatched to and follow that workflow. After that takes place, I need to make sure we recalculate the appropriate status for the work order so that if that was the first time it's been dispatched to somebody, that it will get automatically set to the dispatching status. So our context is currently the text that were selected in the list, so we need to change the context to be the work order that the page is about. So that's the work order from the top of the page. And the status that I want to run, the function that I want to run is the one to set the status. So I'll choose that. So I'll select a tech. I will click on the manual dispatch. The interface will reload. And if I reload this page, it looks like I didn't reload enough. I'll probably have to reload the whole page. Then we'll see that the status has been updated to dispatching. So that's the second step here. Now the next step after dispatching is assigned, and that would happen at the time that we actually assign the work order to be completed by a certain tech, and that's done by this functionality right here. So if I click on the assign button, I get a flyout that makes sure that the user is actually wants to book this tech. So it's a little confirmation step in there. And since I can't access the automation for that flyout, I'm going to need to place that action, that button somewhere in a place where I can access the automation for it. So in my dev section, I'll quickly create a list of work order dispatch records since I don't want to edit my actual user interface up here. I'll show the related work order dispatches. And I want to use the confirmation in flyout button for booking the tech. I'll show what tech I'm looking at, and I'll add the status there just for reference. I don't need to add and remove records in this location, so under list automation, I'll disable all this list automation. Okay, so now I have my list of dispatch records in a place where only I'll be able to see it. And I'm going to access the automation and look at what happens when I click on the confirm booking button. And so I've already built a lot of the automation to actually assign the tech, and that's done by placing the tech that's set into this dispatch record onto the work order in the assign tech field, and also marking all the other dispatch records as no longer available to them. Since we've already found our person, we don't need anybody else trying to apply for it. So the next thing we have to do here is actually execute the function on the work order. So again, I have to go to the related work order to this dispatch record, and I have to execute the set status function. So it's important to note here that I only need to execute this function because the criteria I'm using to see if it's reached booked status is whether or not the assigned tech field is filled in. And so it's fairly early in the workflow process, so it's fairly late in the actual function since we work backwards to forwards. So all I'm checking to see is if tech is assigned, and the first action under this function to book the tech is to fill in that assigned tech field. Now while I'm here, I'm also going to, as a part of this book the tech function, I'm going to timestamp when this tech was actually booked. So I'm going to set on the related work order, I'm going to set date time tech assigned to be the current timestamp, which is now. And that does it for booking the tech. So the next step associated with the work order workflow is to have the tech confirm that they are going to actually complete the work order. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's actually assign somebody to this work order first, so we can actually log in from their point of view and do their appropriate workflow. So I'll actually confirm this person in this spot. Looks like I'm missing an action to actually reload the page. And you'll notice that the status on the work order has been updated to assigned. The related dispatch record is marked as notified, and I'll probably need to add an additional status in there to note that the person has actually been assigned, but I'll go through that separately. And you'll notice that the other work order dispatch records are listed as no longer available. So now that it's assigned to this tech, I'm going to log in as this person and actually do the next step from their point of view. So firstly, I need to know what their username is. So I'm going to go into my administrative section and look at my user table. And this person is this employee. Their username is my email address. And just to be sure, I'm going to reset their password so that I don't look like an idiot typing the wrong password. So I'll log out, log in as this person. Alright, so now I'm logged in from the tech's point of view. No, I'm not. I must have looked at the wrong user in that list. I apologize for that. Just give me a minute. Okay, I'm sorry, that's an employee icon. So this is my actual tech, and that's my personal email address that's used for that. And again, I'll reset their password as well. Alright, so here I am from the tech's point of view. And I'm going to go to my open jobs, and you can see that the work order that I just assigned to this tech is showing up under the open tab. And now I need some sort of a function to allow the person to denote that they've confirmed that they're going to actually work on this work order. So I'm going to need a new field here. And it's going to be confirm. Let's see, mark as confirmed. And it's going to be a link field that the tech will click on to denote that they're confirming that they're going to complete this work order. So this will run some actions. And actually, I want this to be a two-click process. So the first click will open a confirmation flyout, and the second click will be actually clicking another button in the flyout to actually confirm for the work order. Because of that, I'm going to have three fields that all correspond to kind of the same function, so I'll use a naming convention to keep them all together in the interface. And I'll call it tech confirmation, mark as confirmed, launches flyout. Second one will be tech confirmation, help text in flyout, and that will be a formula field. And finally, I'll create a field to be the confirmation in the flyout. And that's going to be a link field as well. Now I'm done creating the fields, so I'll go ahead and set up the automation that I want now. So my first field is going to launch a flyout that contains the other two fields. And that's pretty easy automation to come up with. All I need to do is launch a flyout and pick the fields that I want to appear there. Oops. So I want my help text in the flyout and the confirmation in the flyout. Now when I click this, it'll launch my flyout and it'll look awesome. So the next part is to actually set up the automation on the confirmation button. Now this is going to do all the automation associated with confirming for the work order, and then it's going to reload at least the current form, if not the current page, to let them see an updated interface. So from their point of view, not much on the page is going to change other than on this work order itself. So really all I have to do is load the current list row once that automation is complete. And for the actual automation associated with confirming, I'm going to use a function for that, because I may want to make that visible from the internal employee's point of view. So if the tech were to call in to the internal employee and say, yeah, I'm gonna do this work order, I need an interface for the employee to be able to say, yeah, he confirmed for this, and it's going to do the same automation. So rather than rebuild it in two different places, I'll use a function, and I'll just call it tech confirmation. And as part of the tech confirmation, I need to timestamp when the confirmation happened. So date time marked confirmed. I'm going to be setting that to now. And then I need to re-execute the function to set the appropriate status. And since my timestamp for confirmation will be filled in at that point, it should advance it to the next status if it isn't already. So I'm going to show my work order status in this interface as well, so that when I test it I can actually see and make sure that it changes status. That field is on the work order and it's called status. Okay, so you can see that it's currently set to assigned, and this is the actual interface that they will see. And they'll get the confirmation flyout, they'll click confirm, we'll reload the list row, the status gets updated. So we're good on that one. And now that I got that working, I'll remove the other interfaces and clean up this list a little bit. I don't need a header on this row since the button kind of tells everything that the tech needs. But when they hover over it, I'll give them a little bit more information. So for a tooltip, I'll say, denote that you will complete this work order. So when they hover over it, they should get this, and that'll be a little more informative for them in case they have any questions. Alright, so the next step here is for the tech to confirm that they're going to be on site. Actually, to confirm that they are on site when they actually reach the location that the work order is to be done, because some of these work orders are done remotely and some of them are done on site for the actual customer. So I'll need a new set of those three fields. And by that I mean a button to launch the flyout, some help text in the flyout, and a confirmation button in the flyout. So this is going to be tech on site confirmation confirm launches flyout. I'll have that say mark is on site. Now I need my help text. Again, that's going to be a formula field. And lastly, I'll have the confirmation button in the flyout. So I'll have very similar automation to the previous set. My first button is going to launch a flyout with the other two. And my confirmation button in the flyout is going to first run the function for tech on site confirmation, and after that is going to load the current list row to update the status. And what does the tech on-site confirmation mean? Again, it means timestamping when this actually happened and then updating the work order status. So date time marked on site, I'm going to set that to now. And then execute my function to set status.